Good afternoon. I want to talk today about a few things that have been kind of bugging me. I'm on coffee. They're out of ADHD meds at the pharmacy, and it's been sucking. I'm like in a fog all the time. I'm trying to get myself up to par with at least being a little more alert. I left a post in the group about, range of motion and people thinking that partial reps were superior and all this bullshit. And it's been studied since then, and there's really no difference between the two. And if it all depends on how much effort you're putting into it. For the most part, as long as you were doing from the very beginning to up over halfway into the rep, or doing, in the same portion of the beginning all the way to the top, the results are going to be about the same. Okay? Where the lengthened partials, especially compared to bands, would make a bigger difference was with a weight, it's the same load through the whole movement, but it gets easier because of physics, the way your limbs are when you're pushing or pulling on it. And because it's getting easier, if you save the energy that you would have expended in that part where it's getting easier and just get more reps in the harder part, you could see yourself getting more gains that way. And I used to do that actually for like my pecs. I would go from like an inch above my chest to just like little over half, just barely over halfway up, and just pump in that range. Now, with bands, that would really be a dumb idea, because the bands, they keep getting tighter. So I would want to start with a band and make sure it's very tight in the beginning. Most people, the bands are too sloppy to start with. They start with like where in the beginning tension, it's real super easy. And then they get to the top and there's still ways to go. You want to rig the band up. So when you get, 3/4 of the way to the top, maybe to the top or whatever, like you're hitting a brick wall. Making sure that muscle's contracting as hard as it possibly can. And that's where studies have also shown eccentrics. Normally, there was a thought that the eccentric portion was more important. Well, they're showing now in recent studies that they're about the same. The concentric, eccentric is about the same. You got to do them both. The eccentric portion with the band now, it gets easier. Okay? So when I'm training with somebody, I'll have them push on the middle of the bar a little bit to give me some tension into the negative, and then let off when I go into the contraction, or the concentric part again. Things like that. Or I've even done partials where I go from halfway to the hardest part and pump and squeeze in the hardest area. That's what matters most, is the muscles working hard. And a lot of times the range of motion isn't the do-all, end-all, okay? But for the most part, I try to do full range reps until this is where the partials in the beginning are the most important. It's to reach the furthest point of hypoxia. So whether you're using a band or a weight, after you can't get any more full reps, just keep going until you're wiggling it. Make the body think that it's a do or die situation, and it's gonna make a bigger bang. It's a bigger signal that whatever you're doing, it's more important for survival. Now that's a proven thing. And then tempo. this has driven me nuts. Everybody hangs up on tempo and time under tension bullshit. As long as you're controlling it, that's what matters. And when people are beginners, when they don't know what the hell they're doing and their form is shit, you make them do a slower rep because, one, they don't even have good form to begin with. And then just cranking out reps isn't going to do them any good. You want to slow them down and get them so they feel the groove. Like when they're doing a chest press where their traps are squeezed together through the whole thing, and at the end feeling the contraction of the pec at the same time and controlling the entire range of motion. And that's where it's most important to really slow somebody down. But once you've got the training, okay, whether it takes 4 seconds to do a full rep, like two and two, or it's even shown if it was 3 seconds, like 1.5 and 1.5 to 4 seconds or 4 seconds, makes really no difference as long as you're controlling it and absorbing all the energy out of it. Now with a band, it makes even less of a big deal than weights because the band gets tighter in the contracted position, and then when there's all that tension, it comes down quicker. So you can't, like with a weight, you can't drop and try to get away from it. So as long as you're taking like 1.5 seconds to come down, you're going to have that tension there. And then as you come up, it's just going to get tighter. Where with a weight, if you started quick, you could actually, that through velocity, the kinetic energy just, like lift it up. So weights, it's actually more important for that tempo because you can drop under them or throw them away. Or if you have a band rigged tight enough to where you're coming to pretty much a stop at the end, and then it's coming all the way down, it still has tension. As long as you're doing like 1.5 seconds each way and controlling it, you're not going to see this huge difference doing 3 seconds each direction or 4 seconds each direction. You're not. And there's also studies that have shown anything over 4 seconds in either direction is a complete waste of time. Now you're just wasting reps that you could be getting. Like if it took you 6 seconds to do a rep, or it took you 6 seconds to do 2 reps, it's the same time under tension. And sometimes getting that other rep, making the muscle move each direction again, is more important than spending a couple seconds in a position where you're not really benefiting anything. And you can change it in the harder part of the rep, like with a band at the top. Stay in that section longer. And don't stick around as long in the easy part. I mean, it's common sense. It's the stuff, people just need to think about. Something else I would. Rest periods. There's a meta-analysis that proved like between 1 to 2 minutes, if you're doing a consecutive sets of the same exercise, is optimal for like getting a little extra hypertrophy. But also, if you're doing like something heavy with legs and your ass is kicked, taking a few extra seconds and getting your breath and getting a good set in, there's nothing wrong with that. It's not going to be the end of the world. Guys used to take 5 minutes between each set, and they still grow. The analysis showed that either way you're going to get hypertrophy, but by weight, and a lot of times this is where it would really make more sense is doing smaller muscle groups, because you recover a lot faster. So if you're doing just like biceps, triceps, something like that, the 90-second mark, jump back in. But what's most important is how much effort you put into it. Got your form down. Make sure you're controlling it each direction. Put as much force into the each rep as you can. If you can find a way to add tension to the negatives, there's a lot of lost opportunity there. That's where Emmerich Delsig, loading negatives. If you have a training partner that can like push on the bar for you or put a weight on the bar for you for a second when you're in the eccentric portion, we can lower twice as much load as we can lift. So there's a section there that we can take advantage of, and you get just as many reps because you actually recruit more myofibril. The muscle's getting ready to actually lift that amount of weight, and then you take that weight away, and the myofibrils take a couple seconds to let off and adjust to the lighter load. It'll actually feel like nothing. It'll just come up and do a full squeeze and do it again. You'll actually get more reps and use more load per rep. And that's where, with a band, I've noticed if you do a slower, and people can challenge me on this and argue all they want, but I'm sticking to my guns with it. If you do a little slower concentric, because that's where it's getting harder, okay, squeeze, and then just bring it down and come back up. It takes a couple seconds for the myofibrils to let off and adjust to the load. So if you do like a 4-second negative, then come back up, you're not going to get as many reps. And you're spending too much time in a section that isn't going to be working the muscle as hard. That's why if you squeeze up real slow, then have that split second really hard isometric hold. It feels like you're hitting the brick wall. And it takes a couple seconds for the myofibrils to adjust as you're coming down. So if you come down, you get to the bottom, you're already, the myofibrils have let off a little bit, obviously, but the first half of the rep is going to seem a lot easier, and you're going to get more reps. And until the muscle fibers start failing, the reps start getting shorter, obviously. But just think about this stuff when you're working out. People get so hung up on doing things textbook that they screw themselves out of getting gains. And a lot of it is about the effort put into it, forcing yourself to go beyond. I don't know if anybody ever used to see Tom Platz train legs, but there's a reason his legs were as huge as they were. It was insane. He would make himself get 100 reps with something that he'd normally get 30 reps with. So you stand in the top of the position, take a few breaths, and force yourself to get a few more. One of the best things he ever said was, if you want to get strong, lift a heavy weight a few times. If you want to put on some muscle mass, lift a moderate weight for a lot of reps. If you want to put on a lot of muscle mass, lift a lot of weight for a lot of reps. Right? Yeah, duh. So, another thing is volume. There's studies now that have shown that it's almost limitless. Like you could do 50 sets of muscle in a week, but then there's systemic fatigue. That's where you gotta pay attention. It's systemic fatigue. So if you have muscles that you want to bring up, put more volume into those, and then do more of either a slower, a little bit lower volume, or a maintenance on stuff that you're not as worried about. You can do a shitload of volume and just take a couple days off and let your body grow. But doing a little extra volume isn't going to hurt anything. And in between 48 hours and 72 hours, the muscle you work starts to atrophy. That's why training everything once a week really stagnates. You know what I mean? And that's where Dr. Jaquish has always been smart about doing two or three times a week. And most all my friends that in bodybuilding were the biggest and made the better gains at least at least twice in a week, train a muscle. But people don't understand you can do single sets and stop that. Let's say you're doing, you're going to train just a lot of volume with a real good load, train a muscle group once a week, whatever. But then every couple of days, just do one set of high reps with that muscle. You're pumping blood into the muscle, activating androgen receptors, putting hormones into the muscle, forcing forcing the capillaries to take on, especially if you're doing higher reps, forcing the capillaries to expand and take on more fluid, get a good pump. You're lowering myostatin. You're halting that drop in protein synthesis. You're halting that. You're putting a halt on that atrophy. So you can train like a really hard chest and shoulder day. And then if you're going to wait a week to do it again, just a couple, every other day, do an all-out set of 50 reps with chest and then shoulders. You don't have to worry about that. So, and that's where I'm showing a lot of guys now. Yesterday I did a really high volume arm workout. And now there's a lot of times during the week, you're doing accessory work where it's not full, you're not fully hitting the muscle, but you're doing back, and with a supinated grip, you are working the bicep. You're halting the loss of the atrophy, that you're halting the atrophy there. You're working the delts, and when you're training the back, you're working some of the delts. When you're doing chest and shoulders, you're working some triceps. And then like legs, I really like to do a good all-out leg workout and push myself to a limit that I pretty much can't walk. And then every other day, do like 50 rep bodyweight squats or single leg Bosu ball squats. Just one set every other day till you hit legs again. And try to get one more rep each time. Things like that. You're pushing blood into that muscle, expanding the capillaries, lowering myostatin. You're actually helping it not only recover faster, but you're halting the atrophy, okay? And can even get a little growth. So this is stuff that, I've just been wanting to spit out for a while. Hopefully some people can absorb something from it. I'm not here to argue. If you don't agree with me, that's okay. But I'm just here to help. Anyway, I'm going to be filming some moves that I had promised some people, and we'll let those out in the next day or two, and then we'll talk about some other stuff. Talk about some hormones and some peptides and things like that. All right, so that's what my group's for. The hormones, and we're training, hormones, peptides, you name it, nutrition. And I need people to ask more questions. You know what I'm saying? Everybody have a good day. I will talk to you soon.